Welcome. We're here once again talking becoming retailer, really looking in the hearts and minds of retail leaders amidst this real digital transformation that so many are going through. We feel like it's less about the machines and more about the people. And we have one of my favorite people here today, Karen. Hi, Karen.
Hi, Rob. How are you?
I'm great. We got Karen Beebe here. She's CIO and SVP of Operations and E-commerce at Vineyard Vines, and one of my favorite people in general, and certainly one of my favorite people in retail. So let's get into this. Before we get going into some of the meatier stuff, why don't you just give us a little bit of your background? How did you find your way into this amazing industry of retail?
Yes. Well, I had started off, I knew I wanted to be in technology. And so I had started off consulting, and then I had this opportunity to join Victoria's Secrets. And I just, at the time, they were everywhere. And I thought, I can't pass this up. So I joined Victoria's Secrets, which ultimately was Limited Brands, now L Brands. And that's where I started my retail career. And I think I really feel like I really learned from the best in retail during that time. And I had so many opportunities with so many different brands. So it felt like I was, because at the time there was Express and Lane Bryant and The Limited and Henry Bendel and Abercrombie and Fitch and Galleons, which ultimately became Dick's Sporting Goods. So there were so many brands that I had the opportunity to learn and grow with across my career. And from there, I've had the opportunity to go to a little bit of smaller brands. Chico's FAS, I went there for a while, and then ultimately Vineyard Vines.
All great brands, all household brands. You've had an amazing career in retail. I often say that anybody that spends time, whether Limited, L Brands, it's like getting a master's in retail, isn't it? And just as you said, with all the different brands, with it being such a center of or mecca of retail, and the people that come out of that, it's quite astonishing. You mentioned these household brands, various ones through the Limited, Chico's, Vineyard Vines. You really held various roles within technology. Mm-hmm. Can you talk a little bit about how you've worked effectively across the aisle, if you will, with the business to really translate their needs into ultimately technology solutions that help solve problems for ultimately the customer?
Yes. Well, actually, in my tenure when I was at L Brands, I had the opportunity, because I worked so closely with the business, to go into internal audit for a period of time. And I spent a year there. And I had worked so much within planning and allocation. I actually also spent a separate stint in planning and allocation in my career. So I really, from my perspective, technology was, for me, it was really about providing the business that ways of working and making it easier for them. So you're literally helping them do their job. That's what was so exciting for me. And so I really felt like I was more of a business liaison the entire time. It's not just giving technology for technology's sake. It was about making it easier, making their lives better, making it easier for the business users to use the technology. And so that's what continued to drive me. And the exciting part was that you get to see, and being in technology, and especially now, every single aspect of the business leverages technology. You can not do your job without some type of technology. And so you really see that whole picture. You see, and you can really connect the dots. And that's what keeps the passion for me. That's what keeps the passion driving for me.
Well, let's stay on that for a second, Karen, because you talk about how technology is so pervasive, it really transcends every aspect. How has that, as a technology leader, then kind of changed, or how has your role evolved over time, given the such importance of technology?
I was trying to think about that, because right now, you're in the here and now, and you almost forget about what it was like in the past. In the past, sometimes it was absolutely, you were pushing the technology onto the team members, and you were almost, you're forcing them to make that change. And now the way that things are, and because these things, right, are in the hands of every single person at very young ages, it's that you're probably going too slow. You're not bringing them technology fast enough. So for me right now, what even keeps me up at night is I'm not going fast enough. I'm delivering enough technology fast enough to keep up.
So it's really the dynamic, it sounds like, has changed dramatically from a push where you're continually trying to push the technology on folks. And of course, there's a big change aspect to that, to more of a pull where the business is really thirsty, hungry for that technology.
Yes, absolutely.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
No, I just was thinking about how what's really interesting is you think about, and such unfortunate having with COVID, but the day that we shut the office down and the days that we shut the stores down, everyone had to embrace new technology of working from home and working through Zoom and all the different tools. And it was, it was embraced very quickly.
And let's stay on that for a second. So were you smack dab, I assume, given your role, in the middle of that? So it wasn't a question of if you're going to do this, you're going to do it. And it's a question of how quickly you did it.
Yes. And fortunately, we were already prepared. We were very cloud-based and already set to be remote. But there was 1 week we had trained the team the week before, and then that Friday we ended up closing down. So it was very quick change.
So you're able to move really quickly. You're much more agile probably than others who weren't really set up to move as quickly.
We were. We're a 21-year-old company. And so with that, there does come the benefit of some of the systems that have been set up were set up in a way that were much easier to manage remotely. And so we're fortunate from that perspective.
Awesome. So let's talk a little bit about your current role, right? So as not only CIO, but SVP of operations and e-commerce, it's an interesting mix of both technology and business. Can you talk a little bit about how this came about?
Yes, let me share, because yes, the primary role is the CIO for Vineyard Vines, and I've been very excited about how, from that perspective of joining and being able to work with the team and us provide so much value to the organization. But we had the opportunity to run the supply chain operations team in late 2018, and so I have had the opportunity to expand my role there. And then in February, there was the opportunity for e-com. And then COVID hit.
Little did you know what was going to happen a couple of weeks later.
I was supposed to be the interim leader, and I still am the interim leader. But with COVID, as you know, the stores closed. And our wholesale business, large department stores were closed. And so it was a very trying time, but also through those trying times, how do you continue to service your customers in the ways that they need to be serviced? And we were able to do that through e-com and shipping product to them, and ultimately through reopening our stores in a very, very safe way. So that has been a very interesting experience that I am happy that I have had the opportunity to go through. And I'm very curious on how we ultimately get out of this, right? With COVID ending, hopefully soon. Unfortunately, it seems like that's not the case right now. So.
Yeah, we'll come back a bit to, what you had to lean into, what changes you had to make, what perhaps initiatives were accelerated given COVID. But you mentioned e-commerce, which I think is a good segue into digital transformation. As I mentioned before, and what I think got you pretty excited about this initiative was, okay, we throw out those two words, digital transformation, pretty freely, and often technology, understandably so, is attached to that. But at the end of the day, it's people that we're both executing, but also people that we're serving, right? Our customers are our people. Right. Can you talk a little bit about, Karen, how you've navigated digital transformation through your career, and perhaps highlight a couple of keys to success? What's made some successful digital transformations?
Well, Rob, what I would like you to actually start on is, what do you define as digital transformation?
Yeah, good question.
So many meanings, right? So how do you define that?
That's super fair. And in fact, we went out to the marketplace and surveyed 500 global leaders in retail to get their understanding. And really where it's netted out to is it's a fundamental shift in people, process, and technology that has really leaned into digital, that's pervasive through the entire organization, that ultimately drives change and drives success. So I know that was a mouthful, but it's not, I guess, to put it another way, it's not just about standing up a technology. It's not just about putting a website to the world, but it's rather having digital fully pervasive in your operation and changing the mindset of how you operate. How'd I do? Did I sell you on that? Did it work for you?
I think so. Yes. I think back on what we consider legacy systems, and they're still there, right? It continues. It's how those things continue to morph. But from a digital transformation process, I'm pausing because I'm really trying to think of the right words to use. I think when you think about becoming digital and having that transformation, it is people looking at how are they gathering their information, how easily is it accessible to them to be able to share and manage with other teams. And there is no one technology, right, Rob, that just magically allows you to change all of those processes. It's not like you can put in one platform and it just completely changes your entire company. It is still looking at each one of those processes and thinking through, what do you need to make that in a way that allows the team members to communicate with each other in a way that's digital, that is in a way that allows them to share information and connect together. And I think that's why no one has this secret sauce of here's exactly how you do digital transformation, because it's not one thing.
I love that. By the way, I gotta lean into that a little bit, because you talked about at the very beginning data or information. I think you used the word information. I'm going to use data. Mm-hmm. And it's something we've danced around as part of this series, but I don't think we've hit it on the head as well as you did, which to me, it's, better managing that data, accessing that data, and then once you do that, operationalizing that data across the different parts of the organization. I'm making some of that up and filling in some of the gray space of what you said, but that's what I kind of, from the beginning part of what you talked about, really took what you said. Am I on the right track here at all? Did you mean it that way?
Yes, I did. And actually, maybe that's how I think about it, because it's that data that is so important. And what we've all said before is, okay, data is important, but we're using it in places that are not accessible. And in today's digital transformation, it needs to be there for everyone to be able to access. And so it's how do you put those processes in place that allows that to happen? so that you can go really fast. And I think that's where we're still, you can see where your gaps are because you're not going as fast as you could because you're not sharing that data together.
Awesome. All right. One more point on this, and then I'm going to shift gears a little bit into technology and embracing technology as you do better than anybody, period, full stop. And that's just on the transformation piece. You have any interesting story through your career around digital transformation that you can share? Something that kind of gave you that, wow, I really learned something, some epiphany that you can share that will help bring digital transformation to life for folks?
Well, this is where I have a question. This may be where I have a question back for you. Because
okay, bring it on.
When you keep saying, a lot of buzzwords, right, of digital transformation and so people keep thinking about like, how do you get to that digital transformation? I don't know that sometimes I even know what that envision of digital transformation actually is. And so when you think about that, for each company, they may say, well, this is our digital transformation. What does that end state look like? Are we all walking around where everything I can do is like on my phone now to do every job I possibly can? Is that, I think that's where where does that complete vision go? So I think when you ask the question of what is the learning or have from it is when does it look done? Like, is it actually completed? How far is it going to go? Are we going to have chips in our arms? So then you can we won't need even, you can know exactly where I am and the data just comes to me. So I think that's where I'm like, how far does digital transformation go? And when is it in a place where you can actually say I've achieved it?
Yeah.
Because the company actually said I achieved digital transformation. How did they do that?
Right. What does the end state look like? Exactly. It was funny. I was listening to somebody recently who said, this company went through a massive digital transformation. I'm kind of like, wait, transformation, massive. Isn't it inherent in the word transformation that it's pretty darn big? And what you're saying is, what does this really mean? And what I've seen from our customers is it's a lot of little things, and it's being able to measure some of those as well, but also really being able to balance seeing the vision, but also being very pragmatic. So I think it is that balance a little bit. So I appreciate you pushing back a little bit as you do really well in terms of let's be really practical about this and really tangible, which sometimes I think as an industry, we lose sight of that. Mm-hmm. So as I mentioned, I want to shift gears a little bit, and there's so much I want to get through with you. So I'm going to keep the pace going here. And, as part of Becoming Retail and the survey and global research we did, we uncovered these principles, actually 6 principles. I'm not going to have time to go through all of them here, but one of them is this idea of embracing technology. Retail leaders, established ones like you, really recognize the benefit of technology, not for technology's sake, but as you said on the outset, really helping the end user, helping the customer solve their problems and doing their job. So we break these into 3 actions. So what I want to do is go through each of these actions and get your perspective on it in terms of how you think about this. Because, I consider you one of the mayors of, the retail industry, especially technology. When we go to Kathy
not because
Hocka's
I'm
party,
old, right, Rob? It's not because just checking.
Not at all. It's because you're genuine and people like you, and you built these relationships over time. When we're at Kathy Hocka's party on Sunday night of NRF, everybody's tracking you down and you're excited to be there. The passion is just oozing. So I really want to get kind of inside your mind around what it is about technology. So the first, when we think about technology and embracing technology, it's recognizing that it enables the business, as you talked about. Again, it's not just standing something up, but it's rather understanding the business unit. So how do you and how have you over time evaluated technology to make sure it actually does serve the business and doesn't just, check the box around some big shiny object?
It's it's really been completely in partnership with the business. So it's not just us saying, well, this is what we need to go do and make that happen. So it's a collective partnership. And of course, you go through all the standard best practices of how you would work and talk through what the needs are. But frankly, it comes down to what is easy to use. How do you make it where it's simple? It's I want to say almost that convenience of use. Like there's a reason that you need to use it, and it comes across very simply of how easy it is to adapt and adopt. You know, back and when you were asking me about like I was going to say back in the day, it was so complicated sometimes. You would have to have so many training manuals and so much training that went into adopting software that nowadays it's all about how do you provide that capability that is so intuitive and so easy and yet flexible when someone's needs change. So that's where then you know you have the right solution, because the user team it's easy for them to use, easy for them to adopt, and they're just moving forward with it.
So I'm just, for the record, going to steal that convenience of intuition or me. So intuitive, that's perfect. That really sums it up. And, I always think about it in the context of the store associate, right? We shouldn't make it so difficult for them to serve the customer, check the customer out. And it sounds like that's really your one of your guiding principles.
I think the one, I have to go here. The one that gets me all the time is POS systems. It used to be, and they should be as easy to use as a website, right? Just to shop and leverage. And they weren't, and now they are. They're starting to get down that path, and so it's those type of systems that need to be easy to use, and you just gravitate to it. I wanted to go down the path too, and maybe you're going to go here, is things today during COVID, we've adopted, we talked about Zoom earlier and the ways that we work now remotely, but the curbside pickup, right? Mm-hmm. And we already had ship from store. That was great. And we had buy online, pick up in store. That was great. But then curbside pickup, everyone's doing it. You're doing it for your food. You're doing it for your groceries. You're doing it for everything. That had to be an easy, convenient way to get your products and then customers adapted so quickly to that. And so, I think that's about embracing technology.
I love it. And, it's the whole convenience thing is so true, because it really, to me, is the next level of experience, right? We talked about experience and defined it a lot differently, 8 months ago. And now the experience is much about convenience, safety, right? And really being able to be very surgical about your shopping experience. All right, so let's get to the second action around embracing technology. And that's a deep understanding on how to leverage the cloud to accelerate scale and agility. And I know you were an early adopter of cloud. You also mentioned when COVID hit, because most or many of your systems were in the cloud, you were able to move quickly. How do you think that has really played cloud, that is, into retail and the industry as a whole?
I think it's from a retail perspective, you really can work from anywhere. And you can also get your data from anywhere. And it goes back to also data, right? And that convenience of getting your data. And so having your solutions in a place where you can trust that it's secure, but also where it can become scalable when you need it to be, it has been so important. I mean, it really has changed the way you think about things, but it allows it to scale up when you need it to be. You can scale down when you need to be. And so I firmly think that it has really changed how we all work and how we all think about what's that next solution and how do you make sure that it is set up in a way that is everyone can get to it. The data is easy, it's secure, it's reliable, it's scalable.
Yeah, access and being able to democratize the ability to leverage the data, the information, and so forth. All right, good. So let's get to the third action here around embracing technology, and that is really partnering with technology providers to drive innovation. And I bet you're smiling with this one, Karen, because, you know, as I think about how we've gotten to know each other, you've really, I feel like, changed the paradigm of the relationship between a customer and a provider, where you've really embraced the technology solutions. I go back, you know, more than a decade of knowing you, and really doing that in a way that, of course, benefits your own organization because you're able to move quickly and take advantage of the innovation, but you're also doing it to benefit the industry and that vendor and move us forward. So can you talk a bit about the relationships you forge and why it's so important to do that to drive innovation?
I do believe in having those strong partnerships, those vendor relationship partnerships. And it's been throughout my entire career. And you mentioned earlier, I may have a strong network, but there's no way in this role as a CIO that you can stay on top of everything that's going on. And frankly, in the last, 10 years, and especially the last 5 years, there's so much that you can't barely keep up with it on a day-to-day basis on what's changed, what's coming. And so leveraging that network is one way, but leveraging your vendor partnership network is what I completely believe in. And I know that it has worked because I've done it too many times throughout my career. And being part of that vendor, getting ahead of being maybe one of the innovators with the vendor is where you can get a competitive advantage. If you can make out the right arrangements for it to happen that are mutually beneficial for both companies. And ultimately, you are helping the retail industry, ultimately, when it comes to fruition. So I've had at least 3 or 4 big new innovation type of engagements that have made both companies better. And as you mentioned, we have had one with Salesforce.
Thank you. And I feel like it is a North Star for the industry and a model that a lot can benefit from, similar to you and the organizations you've worked for. All right, so let's round us home here with 1 or 2 questions about retail, given the situation we've been in over the last 8 months or so with the pandemic. And the first question is my favorite one, and one we're asking everybody, which is, and I'm going to put you on the spot here, if I only allowed you one word, what would be the one word you would use to describe retail?
Detail.
Retail detail. Tell me more.
Retail is detail. Retail is detail. I think that's been ingrained with me since I started in retail.
Yeah, it's where you got your master's, right?
Exactly.
And Ohio.
Where that detail, it is that detail turns into data, right? And having a lot of very detailed data about your customers, about your products. And so retail is detail. So detail.
Okay. Hey, so one last, what's that?
That's my one word.
Perfect. Retail detail. I'm glad we got to that one. That's great. So one last question for you, which is, you mentioned curbside, you mentioned Zoom, you mentioned the pivots that the industry had to make and Vineyard Vines was able to do probably a little bit more quickly than others. Mm-hmm. And you look back on these, 2020, if you will, was there an example of a situation where you just moved really quickly and the team got aligned and motivated, even if it was scrappy, to just get it done, where you look back on and say, wow, we moved, we got it done, we saw benefit, probably, faster than we would have ever been able to do in the past?
I mean, actually for us, Rob, it was curbside. just recently. So probably the biggest wow is it's March 9th and you're all talking about, hey, we better prepare that we may have to do some closings. And then it's March 13th and you're closing the office. Like that was the biggest wow. I can't believe that we made all that happen, especially in a retail organization that is about touch and feel of the product. But the other piece has been the wow and the dynamic changes that we've made within our e-commerce platform and coming together and making sure that we're taking care of that customer in a way that does work for them and speaking to them and communicating to them. So through this whole process, especially from that March to the June timeframe, it was wow, we made it through it. And wow, when it came time to open our doors, we had curbside up and running so that people could feel safe and still be able to get a product to them.
Thank you for sharing that. And thank you. I appreciate you sharing your journey, sharing your thoughts. Your perspectives are invaluable for me personally and for the industry. And, when we started to talk about this, I know one thing that really attracted you to the series is putting an imprint on the industry and paying it forward to the next generation. So I appreciate you doing that with us and sharing your journey to becoming retail.
Well, thank you, Rob. And thank you for pulling this together. And I always enjoy working with you. And I'm so glad that I could be part of this. And I think the piece I do really appreciate is how much you are putting into making this so that we can pay it forward, so that it can be memorialized, ceremonialized, and really moved forward. So thank you. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.